G'day folks, welcome to the next episode of She'll Be Right Garage. We're continuing to work on Deathproof. This is the third video installment for the repairs after our big accident. We're pretty much at the halfway point, I reckon, so why don't we continue on with that. We're only a few weeks away from our testing day, and we really need to finish getting this back end together. We've got some replacement axles that have now turned up, and we've also got the fuel tank to finish off, so why don't we more or less get the back end together, shall we? Alright, so first things first, I think we'll take care of resoldering this fuel tube back into the sender. We're going to pop this sender out, we'll resolder that, and then we'll actually look at ensuring that the entire fuel tank is void of water before we put it back in the car and fill it with some fuel. So you can see how this has all come loose with the pipe and the actual top mount of the fuel tank. So we're going to solder it in two places. We're going to solder here to start with, and then we're going to seal around the top, around the perimeter. So that should lock it back in tight where it's meant to be. We'll do the same soldering technique as we've done before. That's some pretty chunky solder now, all the way around. So with the fuel sender repaired, I've actually gone and resoldered the top of this tank as well, just to flatten it out a bit. I'm going to re-drill some holes. We'll do a couple of holes to begin with. So that's more or less lined up where I want it there, and we'll get some of that started, shall we? Alright, we'll complete drilling those holes now with this out of the way, and then we've got a new gasket for that as well. Alright, so we've got our new gasket going on, just a bit of cork, put a bit of paste around that. That's it, they're all tight. We are now ready to pop that in. You can feel how nice and tight that is now, so no concerns moving forward. We'll just tighten up this little line here for the sender. That's it, let's get the tank back in, eh? There we go. Right. That lines up quite well. Yeah, beautiful. That's the fuel tank straps done and dusted, sir. That's it. Alright, sweet. Now that that's in, we just got to connect the fuel inlet pipe and connect up the hose to the fuel pump, and that's done for the fuel tank. I'm really stoked with that, so we'll quickly knock that on its head, and then I think we'll pop these axles in, and that will almost finish up the back end, and if we're lucky, Murray will have those shocks in time for us as well. Done. So now that I've got this fuel system knocked on its head, we can swap out this bent axle. Four bolts holding the axle retaining plate in. It should be good to go. It should come out now, but I haven't put it out for a long time, so we'll see. We may need to get a pulling device on it. We've got the axle starting to come out a little bit. Need to start separating bearing and retainer plate as well. It should come out in a few moments. There we go. After a bit of a struggle, I still can't remove it, so I'm going to take off the backing plate instead, and I'll remove the entire axle and then get rid of the bearing retainer assembly on the vise. Basically a bit easier than fooling around here. The bearing's looking a bit shagged as well from the accident. Alright, there we go. So the axle will pop straight out. So I've now got a bit easier access. I can fool around trying to pop this out. Might put it on the vise. Still very tight in the bearing carrier, but so be it. And if we have a close look, you can see a bit of movement in the bearing. You can see that slop that we're getting. So it's well and truly copped its beating. Righto, let's get him out. There we go. This whole thing's going to go, including the disc. Because if we have a look here, there's a mighty fine crack you can see. Alright, put the caliper mounting bracket back in and the bearing retainer, and we can mount these plates back on together and pop the new axle and bearing back in. Easy as that. The new disc is slightly bigger. We're going to have to wind it back. Fortunately, I do carry my piston tool with me. It's coming very handy on the early Fords. And they do all wind in clockwise regardless of which side. Beautiful. Well, that's it. One axle replacement done. Really, the next step is fitting the shocks, and then the back end is completely sorted. Happy days. So on a happy note, the Murray Coupe shocks have arrived. We've got the new tops installed, so they're all repaired on both sides. So we now need to make a new mounting setup. We're going to actually mount them very much like this and sitting on like so. This is just a rough mock-up, of course, but I've got all the markings lined up for the holes, so we're going to drill them now. Once they're in place, they will end up sitting over here like so. This is the old part that haven't been removed yet, but that'll be the new mounts on each side, like a C-channel. Easy as that. Like that, they come together, and I'll lightly clamp this on, and then we'll weld it in place. We'll do that for both sides. Yep, easy as that. On to the second piece. Easy as that. On that note, I can now line this up after I remove this one. That sits in quite nicely, so we'll just clamp him up. Good to go. But before we can do the other side, we need to sort that out. It's been damaged a bit. We've got to straighten up this angle line. So let's take care of that first, shall we? To make this easy, we're going to cut the welds off on this from the outside and take this piece out completely, just so that we can make sure it's dead straight, or even cut a new piece for that matter. Go. Looking better. Right, we'll just about do it. Let's see if it lines up. That's pretty darn good. Lines up on the corner there. Lines up there. Let's weld them back together. Well, on that note, that's the whole back end mechanically all sorted, so I think it's time to start on this bodywork. So if we have a bit of a look here, you can see the mark that went in on the wheel arch. That's what pushed this in. And I believe on the outer fender it also pushed it up. So I've been actually putting a bit of tension on this ratchet strap. As we can see, it goes around the axle. And it's actually starting to pull the quarter down. And through the inside, I've got a scissors jack also pushing the inner tub out. So we're starting to get a bit of movement. We need to readjust, so I'm going to swap this over and try to get a bit more tension on this part of the quarter. This part here is actually starting to straighten up quite nicely, so we'll keep going this way. It looks rough, but it'll happen. So with that relocated, let's see how we go. A bit of tension. We'll try knocking it with a hammer. So that's starting to pop out, but still not quite straight enough. I think we need to get the inner tub coming out some more. The scissors jack is probably in the wrong position. We've got to move it a bit further back, so we'll look at getting some sort of pressure on the back section as well. So after readjusting on both, we're going to try again. Pulling quite nicely. We'll try inside a bit more. And we'll continue to strike it where it's folded. It's actually started to pop quite nicely. Feeling pretty flat. I put my hand along there now, so I would even actually dare say that that's done. We'll give it maybe a bit more of a fine tune with a dolly in behind it, but pretty happy with that. That's damn near perfect now. Good enough. Well, it's about time we sort some of these bits out. Well, that's starting to get a little bit of shape back. Obviously we've got to stretch it out a lot more and reshape it, but we're getting there. That's starting to get some of its shape. Why don't we line it up on the car, and then maybe we might put it on the English wheel, take it from there.
She doesn't look too bad.
Okay. I think it needs to move down a bit, but yeah, it's okay. That's lining up fairly well. We're going to have to knock that down somewhat. It's a little bit flat. So, and that edge is pretty far off as well, so I think we'll flatten this up more. That's looking somewhat neater. That's fitting very well now, actually.
Looking really good. Fits well at the back.
Yep, and the front's looking half decent, so why don't we
should be right after all.
yeah, why don't we run this through the English wheel just to flatten it a bit more, and that'll do. That's actually fairly smooth, even though it looks rough on the camera. That's actually smoothed that out quite a bit. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be much better than that, to be honest. That'll do. Alright, so I think what I need to do now is remanufacture a bottom piece and weld that on. Then this fender can go back on. So we're getting there nice and easy with the bodywork so far. So I'll start by welding the old mounting tabs back in place that got ripped off. There's one here, there's another one to go there, and another one there, and then we'll make our filler piece. So I know it looks a little bit rough, but it is a rally car after all, and it will do the job.
She'll be right.
She'll be right. Alright, so that's all basically back together. You can see we've got a bit of a chunk missing, so moving forward we'll cut that out, weld a new piece in, grind all of that smooth, and that's the fender ready to put back on. Awesome. So now that we're ready to reinstall that rear fender, we've got another issue that's presented itself. So it needs to also bolt to this panel here. The problem is I can't pull this out where it's meant to be because the mounting bracket for the running boards are bent up. We don't really know exactly where to bend them back to just yet, so we're just going to put a bit of heat on them, bend them down on these two at the very least, so that we can swing this panel forward and get this rear fender mounted. That'll do for now. Let's get this fender on. With all the nuts and bolts put in loosely, you can see it's actually lining up quite well. Pretty happy with that. So let's wrap them all up together. Just like that, the rear fender is on, as good as it ever has been. Beauty. Well, I guess moving forward we need to take care of this bent exhaust. It's been pushed back against here. We may need to shift this bracket a bit, but we've got a crack here on the front of the exhaust, and it's got a crimp on the back of the exhaust. So once we get that exhaust lined up, then we'll start dealing with the running boards. So now as we move forward to the running board, we'll take a closer look at the actual damage that's been incurred. We'll start off with the front. The front's actually pretty good in terms of mounting brackets. Neither of them are bent in terms of the two studs. All of the ends are bent here, but we can deal with that separately. We will be able to use these two as a guide to start on this front. If we have a look, the front here, the outer piece is pretty good. The inner needs some repairs. And it's the same situation on the last one. So when we actually start knocking it out, we will be able to use all of the outside studs as a guide, as well as this inner. So what we'll probably start with is knocking this as flat as we can. Same with this one. We need to get this section straight. We need to correct this fold here, and we'll beat this outer edge as much as we can with a hammer just to get him started. So let's take it from there, I suppose. If we have a look, it's actually starting to line up reasonably well. The rear is actually lined up pretty well. I believe we're going to have to drop it a little bit. We're going to have to move this one forward and this one forward. So it's actually not too bad. I think we can do some of it dry or with minimal heat. So why don't we take care of that now? So I've got a bit of a twist on this panel, but I don't think that's a big deal. I think our next step is to actually bolt it down, and then we'll finalise it. That's actually looking pretty good. And here we are. So there we have it, folks. That's the end of part 3 of our Deathproof rebuild. I'd say we're 3/4 of the way through, so the next video on Deathproof will be the final one for repairs. Apologies for the delays in the videos. We've had a bit of real life just come up in the way in the last couple of weeks, but we should be a little bit more regular again and back to normal. The next video after this is going to be Sleazy finishing off the bodywork for registration, so do join us for that as well. And don't forget to check out our links, like, share and subscribe. Cheers.
I don't think there's much else you can hit, is there?
Oh, with our luck we'll hit another car. Of course I'll put that the wrong way around. There we go. Shut up, idiot. That up?
That's the range of the outfit right there.
Clearly.
Not
The
sure,
looks as well, apparently.
not sure how he managed to score it, but anyway.
I was partly blind and partly deaf when I met him.
Yeah, and must have been pretty drunk too, I'd reckon.
Yeah, but when you consider the men in this house, she actually picked the best out of some very bad choices, you know.
Wow.
Because that's how good we are, apparently.
Well,
I am.
yeah.
Shut up, idiot.
Let's not get too carried away. Bloody backyard mechanics, got no idea what they're doing.
You got this on back to front. That's why. Fuck me dead. I've got to put it on back to front. Let's start that again. Get in the hole, will ya? There we go. Fuck you. Ow. Fuck that up.
Just lost a little bit.
Ah,
Come on, smack me there.
didn't do a good enough job.
It's gonna fucking hit anyone. Of course it'll be fucking me. It's not like that. I'm gonna fucking crush it again.
Shut up, idiot.
I'm gonna get smacked the other way, standing there, one of the two.
Oh, you're expendable, that's okay.
That's a fair point. I don't think you actually showed you how to use one of these things.
No.
You can tell.
Shut up. I think 400 horsepower or thereabouts is more than enough torque. For a 1250 kilo car.
You're a decent driver, I probably wouldn't be.
Fuck off. If you're a decent navigator, I'd be able to not do it without crashing.
Yeah, well. You win some, you lose some.
Boy, did I fucking lose with you.